So yesterday we had that very interesting story, how God came to Abram and he can cut up all those animals. I forgot to tell you an important part of that one. When Abram at the very beginning said, "Can it be Eliezer?" God said, "No, I'm going to give you a son and your descendants." He brought Abram outside and said, "Look at the stars." And Abram looked into the sky and he saw all these stars. There were so many. And God said to Abram, "Your descendants are going to be more than the stars of the sky, so you can't even be able to count them." And that's when then God told Abraham to give him cut those animals up. And remember, Abraham didn't go through, but God went through. God was saying, "I'm going to make a covenant with you, and I'm going to keep my part, and I'm going to be punished for the part that you can't keep," just like Jesus did. Well, boys and girls, you remember that when Abram first came into Canaan, he was 75 years old. So was already pretty old, and Sarai and he had no children. But God had promised Abram. But 1 year went by and Sarah did not have a baby in her tummy. And then another year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And finally, there were 10 years went by. And Sarah thought, "I don't think I'm ever going to have a baby in my tummy. I think God probably wants us to think of a way to do this." Now, Sarah had a maidservant. In those days, mummies needed a lot of extra help because there were so many things to do. And she had a servant girl, a person who helped her in the house, in the tent. And that girl's name was Hagar. She was from Egypt. And then Sarah had an idea. She thought, "You know what?" She went to Abram and she said, "God's just not giving me a baby. So maybe you should marry my servant girl Hagar too. And then you can have a baby from her." Well, that was not God's plan. But Abram did not ask God first. He said, "Okay." So then he married Hagar too. So now he had 2 wives. And sure enough, a little while later, Hagar had a baby in her tummy. And when she found out she had a baby in her tummy, she thought she was a lot better than Sarah. She's sort of like, "I'm not going to do what you tell me to do." She was kind of despising Sarah. Sarah was very upset. First of all, she had wanted the baby in her tummy. And 2, she did not like it that Hagar was treating her like, She went to Abram. She said, "Here I give my servant girl to you and to your embrace. And now look, she has a baby in her tummy and she's despising me." And Abram said to Sarah, just treat her the way you want to treat her." Abram didn't really know what to say. Sarah said, "This is the Lord judge between me and you." Well, when Abram said, "Well, just do what you want," Sarah thought, "I'm going to get that girl." And she started to treat Hagar in a rough way. She was harsh with Hagar. "No, you do what you want." That sort of thing. And Hagar thought, "I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to be treated like that." So she ran off. And she ran off into the desert. And when she was sat down by a little well, an angel of the Lord saw Hagar. And he said to her, "Hagar, where did you come from? Where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai. I'm running away from her." And the angel said, "No, you need to go back to her and you need to obey her. You have a baby in your tummy, and I'm going to make your descendants also very, very many. When you have your child, you're going to call his name Ishmael. And he is going to be a wild person. His hand is going to be against everyone, but I'm also seeing your affliction. So when Hagar said, wow, wow, this is the God who sees me. He sees us. And he's promised me a baby boy. So Hagar did what God commanded her to. She went back to Sarai and then she obeyed Sarah. She didn't mock her anymore. She obeyed Sarah. And then 1 year later, a little bit while later, she had that baby. Abram was 86 years old and they had that little baby. Hagar had that little baby and they called his name Ishmael. But still, Sarah does not have any children yet. Do they still believe the promise? And that's the end of that story.